Hi, everybody. Very good morning for the day, and welcome to the webinar by Indian Dental Association. So, here is Dr. Kaushal talking on trial visits, where we'll be covering. Hi, everybody. Very good morning for the day, and welcome to the webinar by Indian Dental Association. Okay. Sorry, there were some technical issues. Anyways, so today we'll be talking on trial visits, covering site selection, site initiation, site monitoring, and closeout. So going ahead, later on you will be having an option to ask me the questions via online chat, and yes, we'll be taking it ahead. So over to the slideshow, and here we start. Okay, so what are the types of visits in clinical research? Basically, when we talk about clinical research, we talk about documentation, we talk about visits, we talk about patients visits, we talk about patient visits, we talk about safety, we talk about confidentiality, multiple things. But ensuring that the trial is conducted in compliance with four things: ideally, your protocol, your SOPs, your regulatory authority requirements, and the most important, ICH GCP. Understanding the visits done from the sponsor's end is something really very important, because these helps you in complying and adhering to all the four basic requirements what we just talked about. These visits will help in a proper conduct of a trial, in a successful run of the trial, and these visits are something that is the core responsibility of the sponsor. So let's start talking on what are the different visits of a clinical trial. What are the different visits? Site selection, site initiation, site monitoring, site closeout. Now, what do we mean by site initiation visit or a site selection beforehand? This visit is conducted to evaluate a site's and investigators' resources and capabilities to conduct a study in terms of site infrastructure, adequacy, and availability of the site facilities for the study conduct. So basically, this is the first visit that is done by the sponsor. It lies under the responsibility of sponsor under Section 5 of ICH GCP. This is the visit which is conducted before we have the final list of sites. This visit helps us in understanding what are the visits, how is the site equipped, what are the facilities available, and this becomes one of the very crucial visit, because selecting the right site at the right time is very, very important. If at all we fail in a successful site selection, we would face several problems coming down the line. So what do we try to evaluate? What are we looking for at the site evaluation visit or site selection visit? Or we also coin it as the site feasibility visit. So multiple terms used, like we know. Under clinical research, we have multiple terms that have been coming up every now and then. So basically, first and foremost, investigator's qualification. We need to select the right investigator, looking at the database available, looking at the past experience, looking at the specialty, looking at the experience in clinical trials, looking at the patient pool, and multiple things as such. So first, up-to-date CV. Now, CV of investigators is a very crucial document that we look for, which has to be updated every 2 years, as that helps us in understanding the specialty of an investigator, previous experience in conducting a trial. That is something really very important, as some protocols are really very complex. Starting with a complex protocol with a new investigator becomes a real challenge. So ensure that the investigator is well experienced into the clinical trial, the conduct of the study, and also has faced a couple of audits or inspections coming on the way. Speciality plays again a major role as we understand selecting the right investigator for a perfect indication. So, for example, if we have a study or a trial or protocol on oncology, we cannot have an investigator who is a diabetologist. So, we need to be very precise while we are selecting the right investigator. Previous experience in conducting a trial, like I just said, we need to be very sure that he or she is very well experienced, at least being a principal investigator or some experience as in some investigator. Because when we talk about an experience in clinical trial, a person who is well experienced, at least we can ensure that he or she has a good experience. The most crucial thing, reporting of an essay, as we have specific timelines, 24 hours from the time of occurrence, as per the current scenario, at least as per Indian regulation. So we need to ensure that an investigator has a good idea on how the reporting is to be done. And this comes from experience. As a monitor, a clinical research professional will be very well available, readily available to support for anything that is happening or as and when required. But an experienced investigator is something that will add to a timely completion of all the reportings. Going ahead, adequate resources. Something that is again very crucial, sufficient time, very, very important. As we know, the investigators whom we tend to select are well-known doctors, good practicing doctors, HODs of organizations, HODs of their respective departments. So they ideally are not available to give sufficient time. But during site selection visit or site evaluation visit, we need to understand how much they would be available or dedicated towards a particular protocol. As per ISIS, as per ISIS GCP section 4, anything and everything happening at the site becomes a responsibility of an investigator. So overall, it becomes his responsibility to look into all the multiple activities like submissions to ethics committees, like submission to ethics committees, like taking care of the protocol, completing the subject visits, reporting of an adverse events, IP accountability, or the complete management of IP, basically, if we have to put it. For that, you need to give time. No wonder we would be having something called as DDL, Duty Delegation Law, or Delegation of Authority Law. So these activities can be delegated to the respective team members, but the overall responsibility still lies with the principal investigator. Adequate staffing, the team members requirement. We need to have sufficient team members available for the particular conduct of the protocol, as that is something that will really be required to adhere to the requirements. Again, I would repeat the four main requirements. The first and foremost, I say GCP, local regulatory requirements, protocol requirements, and abiding to the SOPs. Population. What do we mean basically by population? The most important resource, the patient pool. That is what we are talking over here. And what do we mean by the population? Knowing how big is the patient pool for that particular hospital or a site, the right word to be used as per I say GCP. What is the patient pool? Patient pool basically not only with indication, but also we need to understand looking at the inclusion exclusion criteria of the particular trial. So for example, if we talk about phase 2 study, the inclusion and exclusion criteria are very, very stringent. Say, for example, if we are doing a study on diabetes, if it is a phase 3, your inclusion exclusion criteria can be a bit widened compared to phase 2. For phase 2, it would be very precise. So, having the population and that particular requirement and that particular window is something that is really very crucial. So, we need to understand, are we able to enroll the right number of patients in the window that has been provided, the recruitment timelines that we have, and are we able to meet the number of recruitment or the number of patients that are required for that particular site. We also have something called as PPSM, patient per site per month. That gives us a average window, how many patients we will be able to enroll in the particular study in that particular month. And that is one of the most crucial parameter, and that is something that is very crucial parameter for us to understand, or for us to have a basic understanding of the total recruitment target. And that is something really, really every sponsor looks in for, the right number of patients in the right number of time. Going ahead to the next slide, adequate facilities. Again, something that is really very important. Like, for example, examination rooms. If, for example, we talk about an oncology trial, it's not a patient can be checked or treated into an OPD. We need an examination room. We need an infusion room. That is something really very important. The room should be readily available for clinical trial patient. It should not so happen that all the OPD patients and the clinical trial patients are being examined in the same room, because something called as confidentiality of subject is really very crucial and should not be put at stake. Pharmacy or study drug storage area. The second most. The drug is something that is to be evaluated, something that is under research, which is a real important molecule, and maintaining that in the right place, right time, in the right form, in the right manner, which is something really important. So ensure that the drug is stored in the right area, at the right temperature, under the right observation, with the lock and key, even if it is in the refrigerated manner. Say, for example, the drug is to be stored from 4 to 16 degrees centigrade, the ideal temperature what multiple drugs are observed. We ensure that the refrigerator where the drugs are stored is maintained in the right place, in the right time, and under the right observation, not the right time, but the right observation. The temperature is actually recorded on a daily manner by every individual. So when you are selecting the site, you need to ensure that these facilities are readily available. If not, and the site is really very crucial, a sponsor also take up the responsibility for providing some facilities. Laboratory or specimen processing area. Now, when we talk about laboratory, we all understand that nowadays clinical trials do prefer to have central laboratory across the country, or if it is a global trial across the globe, one central laboratory to have the standard results being generated, and not having multiple different normal ranges. The analysis is not varying from laboratory to laboratory, keeping their standards or their calibration into mind. So we have a central laboratory, but that does not mean that we will only stick to central laboratory. We also need to take care of the local laboratory, which may be in-house or which may be a nearby facility. So understanding the laboratory requirements for your particular protocol, for your particular trial, is again something that is really very, very important. These laboratories may only be required for processing the samples. No, this may also be required for managing your serious adverse events. At a point of time where a serious adverse event happens, you need not have sufficient time for sending across the samples to central laboratory. You need to do the run of the particular sample then and there. So it's nothing but your laboratory, which is your nearby facility or your in-house facility, that is something that is will be required. So understand the laboratory, its certification, the basic requirement that you need for your protocol, because all the laboratories might not be fully equipped with the basic requirements as per your protocol. So ensure that the site is having in-house laboratory facility or a nearby laboratory facility before you select a particular site. Going ahead, special testing areas, X-rays, MRI, CT scans, many more. Again, we take a very good example of an oncology trial. What is preferred? Something we call as PET scan. PET scan is something which every setup would not be having it in-house. So if it is not in-house, how you are managing it for your study? A nearby facility, or if it is in-house, is it as per the requirement? What is required? Ensure to confirm with the site where they would be using it, how the patients would be, how would the patients commute to that particular facility, what is the time for the report generation, and in what format the reports are generated. Is it covering all specific requirements for the trial, all the information that is required for the particular trial? Select the right facility. Ensure, or else the best is ensure to select those sites where the facility is readily available in-house to save time, to save money, to save resource. Record keeping facility. The golden rule in clinical research, what we say, what is documented is done. So anything and everything under clinical research or a clinical trial has to be documented. And these records have to be maintained. Like as per Indian regulations, if we talk, the records have to be maintained for 15 years. And as per ICGCP, the records have to be maintained for 2 years after the trial is conducted or the completion of the trial. So ensure all the records, all the documents, all the files, each and every single note is recorded and they are maintained in the right way. So for that, we need a proper setup. People call it as a clinical research room, which every site does have it. So how is this room? Is it fireproof? Is it waterproof? Are the closets maintained in the right manner? Are they with a lock and key? Do they have sufficient space? Because the documents will go on increasing day by day. Ensure that everything is available. Let's go ahead. Protocol review and discussion. Yes. Now, we as a research professional or a monitor or a person who is going for the site selection or site level evaluation or site feasibility visit, he or she is definitely aware of the protocol. He or she has understood the complete requirements. He or she has gone through the site. The details have been understood. So now it's the time to discuss the protocol and have a brief understanding with an investigator, briefing them on what are the study objectives. This helps in understanding whether investigator is comfortable, is satisfactorily happy to go ahead with the trial or not. Discuss the inclusion exclusion criteria during the visit. These will help you in understanding, or this will help an investigator in understanding his patient population and confirming the required numbers and how much time he or she will be able to enroll into the study. Study procedures. What is required during the day-to-day visits by the subject? How the reporting is to be done? What are the different tests have to be performed? How are they to be reported? How are they to be documented? Schedules of assessment. The number of visits that an individual has to come for. And this visits, what I'm talking about is the visits by the subject. Subject might have to say, for example, a trial is to be conducted for 3 years and the subject has to come on a monthly basis. So 36 visits followed by the follow-ups that we would be having to check the long-term safety and efficacy of the particular drug. So these visits need to be discussed because patients enrollment is one task, patients retention for a completion of the study is another major task, because patients ideally have a mentality that now I'm feeling well, so why should I continue? Why should I take this medications for another 1 year when I've already taken it for 2 years? No. But for us, as this is a clinical trial, we need to ensure end-to-end efficacy, end-to-end compliance, and the most important, competing trials. As we know, as we discussed, that we would be selecting an investigator who is basically a specialist in that particular indication. So we also need to understand that he or she is having any other trial with regards to the similar kind of protocol, with similar kind of inclusion exclusion criteria. There are n number of competitors into the pharma world. We may be having more than one drug which is into the market under clinical trial for the same indication. So understanding, is the same investigator dealing with a similar trial with some other pharma or other sponsor? If yes, definitely it is going to harm my recruitment as well as the competing trials recruitment. Is that good? Is it not? Do the analysis thoroughly. Before going to the next visit, it's not that we would directly go for site evaluation or selection or site feasibility visit. We would have something called as a feasibility questionnaire. It's not directly we have the database and we jump in for the site selection visit, intimating the investigator that I or we would be coming down for the site selection. Definitely, the process starts with something called as CDA, confidentiality agreement. How the process goes is the CDA is sent across to the site, to the investigator. The CDA is sent across. The basic essential documents, understanding of the protocol are shared. They are reviewed, understood, analyzed. Followed by that, we get a feedback on the feasibility questionnaire asking whether the site is initiated to participate, what are the facilities they have as per the requirement of the protocol, what is the patient pool that they would be targeting, and so on and so forth. So once we get it, we as a clinical research professional would do the analysis from our end. If the site qualifies to fulfill all the requirements, then we would go for a confirmatory check, what is nothing called as your site selection or site evaluation or site feasibility visit. And after this, we would confirm that the site is selected to go ahead or not. Once a site is selected, we go ahead with the EC submissions, we go ahead with the regulatory submissions, and once the submissions are done, approvals are received, we plan for site initiation visit. The next visit, what we were talking about. Now, what do we understand by site initiation visit? Initiation, what itself is something to start with. So once it is selected, we have all the documents in place, we have the drugs that have been shipped at the site, we have the laboratory requirements that have been shipped at the site, the team is readily available. Now it's a time for site initiation, just before the patients gets started into the enrollment. So what is site initiation? The site initiation visit is planned to provide study specific information to investigator and staff prior to the study startup and to reassess the resources and capabilities of the site to conduct the research study. So basically, if I have to put it in a very simple language, this is the visit where you would train the site staff, where you would train the investigator and reassess all the resources and the capabilities that were observed, analyzed, understood, and approved during your site selection visit. The things might have changed from the site selection to site initiation. The time from site selection to site initiation can be 1 month, can be 2 months, or can be a couple of days, depending on the approvals that you receive. Going ahead, the monitors will also discuss with the staff about research obligations as per the GCP. Monitor will provide the necessary guidance to the site to help the site in being successful. So we did talk about the experience in clinical trials. So we are very well aware that all the sites are experienced by conducting the clinical trial, but also even then a monitor has to ensure that the site is retrained on ICH GCP apart from the protocol requirements. Now, why you need to do this? To ensure that each and every individual is refreshed about the GCP guidelines, they are aware of their obligations, obligations from the investigator, obligations from the sponsor. So the roles and responsibilities are very clear and things can be escalated or discussed in an appropriate manner. Now we would split up the site initiation visit in three forms: before the initiation visit, during the initiation visit, and after the initiation visit. So what is the requirement or what preparations are required before we go ahead for site initiation visit? We have the complete list listed over here. Let's go through it one by one. First and foremost, what we talk, the first document, CDA, Confidentiality Agreement. Ensure that the CDA is very well executed and readily available for a final review. So before you go for site initiation visit, ensure that you at the research as a research professional at the CRO or a sponsor's end have the CDA signed, fully executed, available with you. Check for the approvals. Ensure that before you go ahead for the site selection or site initiation visit, your ethics committee approvals, your regulatory approvals are readily or are received, and it's not a conditional approval. It's a final approval for go ahead. Why this is important? Because now your site is trained and your site is ready to start with the enrollment. So on the date of site initiation, there should nothing be pending at the site. Ensure that everything is available, ready to use, and the final executed documents. So these approvals, you will also need to check for what all documents are approved with the version number, with the dates, and ensure that the copies of the same documents are available at the site. Going ahead, CTA and or FA. CTA, Clinical Trial Agreement. Your clinical trial agreement is a document which is signed between the parties, which can be an investigator or an institution with the sponsor or CRO and CRO. So it can be bipartite, it can be tripartite, depending from site to site, country to country, and sponsor to sponsor. So ensure that all the parties who are involved under CTA are signed across. Now, are the CTAs and financial agreement different? Are they same? Yes, the financial agreement becomes a part of your CTA. But at times, we have also observed that some of the investigators are not really very comfortable in sharing the financial clause or the financial aspects with the team members or with the monitor, as they consider it to be very confidential. So in that case, all the financial aspects of the trial are under a different agreement altogether, and we call it as a financial agreement, nothing but FA. So this financial agreement lies with an investigator and is produced only upon a special request by the monitor. But CTA has to be something onto the site file, which is to be reviewed on a daily basis or rather visit to visit basis. So ensure that your CTA or financial agreement are fully executed. There are no signatures pending with a proper date. ISF. Now, when we talk about the master file, we have, or rather, when we talk about the filing of the document, the section 8 of ICH GCP, if we see, we understand filing at the sponsor's end and filing at the institute or site's end. Now, what do we mean by filing at an institution end and filing at the site end? When we talk about filing at the site end, we call it as an ISF, which is nothing but investigators site file. And when we talk about filing at the sponsor's end, we have something called as CSF, Central Site File. So over here, ensure that your ISF is sent across to the site. Now this ISF is further split into two parts: regulatory binder and pharmacy binder. Regulatory binder, where you would have all the crucial documents, logs and forms with regards to the trial visits, are with regards to your SUSARs, which would also cover upon the CVs, the basic documents like ICFs, the other documents like your NTFs for some sections, your memos, your visit logs. When I talk about visit logs for regulatory binder, I basically understand by the monitor's visit log, where you as a monitor, when you go to the site, you sign across. When we talk about pharmacy binder, this would be covering everything with regards to your IP. So what with regards to IP? The temperature logs, IP accountability log at the subject level, IP accountability log at the code level, what you also call it as a bulk accountability log, your IB, and so on. So ensure that this particular file is sent across to the site before your site initiation visit, as you would be training them on ISF. You will be discussing on the logs. Maybe we can see it when we are talking about during the site initiation visit. Ensure that the IP is received at the site. IP, investigational product, yes, this has to be available at the site, as you would be talking on how it is to be stored, how it is to be dispensed, how it is to be read, how it is to be documented. So ensure that the site is equipped with IP also. Lab kits. For every visit, you have a different set of lab kits that site receive to go ahead with the patient visits. And you would also use one of the kit as a dummy kit, where you would be opening those kits and explaining on what all is available into the kit, how they are to be labeled, how the kits needs to be maintained, how the things needs to be sent to the site or to the central laboratory. Sorry. Talking about the system setups and accesses. Nowadays, we are shifting from a world of paper to electronic. We used to have paper CRF some years ago. Now we are dealing with EDC, electronic data capture. So we have eCRFs now available. We used to have the envelopes where the patient randomization used to happen. Now we have something called as IVRS or IWRS. So ensure that the site, at least the principal investigator, the sub-investigator, and the site CRCs or the site coordinators, what we talk about, have received access to these particular systems, as you would be taking them through the use of these particular systems. Training material, you yourself needs to be ready with all the training material for the training that have to be imparted at the site, with regards to protocol, with regards to therapeutic training, with regards to ICH GCP, with regards to SAE reporting, and so on. Administrative support. At times, we understand that the site does not have XYZ facility, and which facility can be provided by the sponsor. Like a fantastic example, what we had used before is a refrigerator. To store, at times, we also need to preserve the tissue samples, which needs to be maintained at -20. So we need a deep freezing refrigerator, and each and every site might not be available, but the site is very crucial with regards to patient population, with regards to other facilities, with regards to the PI. So and the sponsor feels that this particular site needs to be provided. So ensure this kind of administrative support is already provided before you go for site initiation visit. SSV report, checklist review, and follow-up letter review. So we understand or we are aware that every site or every visit at the site is supported, or rather it's completed. The visit is only completed once your report and follow-up letter are finalized. Right? So ensure before you go for site initiation visit, you review the previous visit report. So the previous visit was site selection visit. That's right. So review the report. This will help you in understanding what was that was something pending, or what were the action items, or what was something that needs to be checked or confirmed during the next visit. So these things will help you in confirming during your site initiation visit and discussing the same. Now coming down to the preparation for site initiation visit. So again, every visit starts with a confirmation letter with the agenda. So before you go for the site initiation visit, ensure that the confirmation letter for your site initiation visit is sent across to the site. Site have received the letter with the agenda, which would explain on the time that is required for each and every activity. Basically, this would be required as maybe the pharmacist would not be required for the complete day session. So this will help him or her to understand what is the time where he or she needs to be available. So ensure to send the agenda with your confirmation letter well in time. Review the COP and MP. What do we mean by COP? Clinical Operations Plan, and MP, Monitoring Plan. The latest amendment of ICH GCP, which came down in November 2016, which now briefs or explains what is monitoring plan. Till date, yes, monitoring plan was something that was used, that was implemented by the CROs, by the sponsors, but it was nowhere mentioned into GCP. But now GCP also does talk about monitoring plan, and this is nothing but a part of your clinical operations plan, or it is also coined as only monitoring plan. So when we talk about monitoring plan, what it is all about, monitoring is something that goes on and on and on till your trial ends. So the site should be aware how frequent the monitoring visits would be, what would be the agenda during your monitoring visits, and what would be the process of the monitoring at the site. So if you are not aware how you would train the site, so ensure that you review the monitoring plan once again before you go for your site initiation visit. So now we have done all the preparations and we are ready for site initiation visit. So we reach at the site as a research professional for site initiation visit, starting with the trainings on protocol. This would be the most crucial, yes, as the site is aware of the protocol, but the right training is something that is really, really important. Investigator is very well experienced, maybe a senior doctor, a well-known name in that particular indication, but what would his knowledge be on the new drug, on the process of the new drug? We do not think so. So it becomes a responsibility of a person who is on for the site initiation visit to brief him or her in details about the protocol so that your adherence to the four crucial parameters. Again and again, I would be repeating this, the four crucial parameters: adherence to protocol, your ICH GCP, your local regulatory requirement, and your SOPs are taken care of. IP. What is IP? Investigators brochure. Right. Investigators brochure is something which gives you in and out information about your new product or the IP or the medicine that is under the study. So this will also help us in understanding what are the identified side effects or the adverse events or the serious adverse event. So training on IV is something again that is really very important because an investigator should be aware of the known side effects or the known adverse events and the management towards it. Basic manuals. So when we talk about manuals, what do we talk about? We talk about the EDC manual, CRF completion guidelines, we talk about the lab manuals, we talk about the IVRS manuals, because it's day to day the site who would be dealing with this particular systems. Every time it might not be feasible to contact the CRA or the project manager for every small query. So what would be the reference material? What would be the source for guidance? It's nothing but the manual. So ensure that the manuals are well explained to them, what to find where, at what point of time. GCP, very, very, very important. Like we talked about before, again, I would be saying we know that the site does have experience, but refreshing the team, refreshing the investigator with the GCP guidelines is something very important. If at all we are having the sites in India, we would definitely go through Indian GCP Schedule Y. If it is in US, for example, we would go through the guidelines of USFDA and so on and so forth with the respective regulatory authority guidelines. SAE reporting, again a very important parameter. Let's have a brief or rather have a refresher on what are SAEs. The five parameters that we talk about for an adverse event: death, life threatening, congenital anomalies, and hospitalization or prolongation of hospitalization, persistent disability. Yes, these are the five parameters what converts your adverse event to serious adverse event. If it is an adverse event, we would report it into the CRF and it can be monitored during the upcoming monitoring visit. But what if it is an SAE? We have a specific timeline, we have a specific format, we have a specific requirement by what these has to be reported. Reported to the sponsor, yes, to the ethics committee, and to your local regulatory bodies. The reporting has to be done in a very crucial or very stringent timelines. Like in for India, if we talk about, the reporting has to be done within 24 hours from the time of occurrence. So knowing the particular event in the right time, training the site staff so that the site staff can impart this particular training to the subject to ensure that the timely reporting is done. Going on to the next topic, duty delegation log or delegation of authorities log. Now this is again a very, very, very important document which will be completed during your site initiation visit. Now what this document is, we need to understand that as we would not be finding this particular document under ICGCP as an explanation, but yes, definitely we would find this particular document under section 8 of ICGCP. This is a document where an investigator will delegate responsibilities to his or her team members. So maybe a sub investigator is given end to end activity as he is nothing but a shadow of your principal investigator. Okay, so sub investigator is a shadow of his or her as an investigator in his absence, or in the PI's absence, it is the sub investigator who would take up all the responsibilities. So end to end responsibility of an investigator would be delegated to the sub investigator. But it would not be the same for the rest of the team members. Maybe we would be having two or three study nurses. One is responsible only for patient visit, one who would be only responsible to ensure that the documentation is done in time. We would be having a phlebotomist who is responsible for blood withdrawal, the processing, and the shipment of the drug to the central laboratory. We would be having a videographer in certain cases as per Indian regulations who would be only playing a role for recording the video during the consent processes. In case of vulnerable subjects, yes, we do not forget that, and so on and so forth. So understanding each and every individual's responsibility on that particular protocol in the team is something really very important. But let's also not forget the overall responsibility still lies with an investigator. ICF process, demo, and setup. So of late we had a amendment coming out in India where every informed consent process was to be audio visually recorded. So, and the guidelines that were set forth were kept open end to end. So every individuals were able to manipulate as per their choice. So having a specific SOP, following it is a standard pattern for every subject across the site, it becomes an investigator of a monitor or a CRA who is going ahead for the site initiation visit so that the uniformity is maintained across all the sites. So the process, irrespective of the videographic process, the process of informed consent is also something that is really very crucial what the site needs to understand, learn, and be trained. Because signing the consent form, dating it, having the right information in the right manner is really very important. Because this is the information which would be picked up during an adverse event or a serious adverse event for the compensation. Who is the nominee? What is the patient's earning basically? As this will help in calculating what is the compensation that has to be provided. So all this information needs to be briefed when we talk about ICF process. Also, if it is a pediatric population study where you would be having informed consent form as well as an assent form. So how the assent has to be taken, who would be signing, who would be the signing authority, how the pediatric population or the children would be briefed on, and so on has to be discussed in details when we talk about ICF process. Logs and forms. Again, I would talk. What is documented is done. So whether things are documented, yes, on the logs. A very, very, very important document, or I would not say an important document because each and every document is important, but yes, a document where you would maximum find the findings. The temperature log. Ideally, individuals have a tendency not to document the temperature on a daily basis. Some really do, exceptions are always there, but many do not follow the process. So ensure, train the site, make them understand the importance of this particular activity to be done on a daily basis so that there is no misconduct for that particular activity and the documentation is up to the date in a timely manner. Also, when we talk about logs and forms, we talk about patient visit logs. If the visit logs are prepared for a patient on a timely manner, the visits are not happening outside the window and we are avoiding protocol deviations. So again, that is something that is really very important. Training logs. Ensure that once your SIV is over, all the team members who have attended the training are documented and the log is up to date because in the near future, if there is any misconduct, a training log will be something like a savior. At least we will be in a position or you will be in a position to ensure that the team was really trained on it. And now that is something called as retraining would be required to avoid the misconduct that has happened. So the training log is something that will be very important to understand on what date, what training, by whom, and to whom was provided. Source data informing log, information log. This is again one of the essential document listed under ICA GCP. So basically, sites have a practice of having a different source data altogether for a clinical trial subjects. But yes, we also have the medical records by the hospital in the MRD, what we talk about. So ensure that this particular log has a patient's file number mentioned, what date the last visit happened is mentioned, so that it becomes very easy for you to retrieve the document in case of any emergencies or for your audits, for your inspections, for your day-to-day monitoring. Tour of facility. Once your trainings and everything is over, ensure that you take a hospital or an organization or the site setup, whatever it is. It can be a nursing home, it can be a hospital, it can be a private clinic. So you take a tour of that particular facility to understand what particular departments are where, what is the facility for an individual or a participant coming down for a visit, and so on and so forth. IV storage and dispensing. Now again we go back to the temperature, to the safety, the lock and key mechanism, what we'll talk about. The IP needs to be maintained and under a lock and key in the secured manner, under the right observation, under the right individual, at the right temperature. And how the dispensing is to be done. Is it that you would bring out everything? No, that should not be the practice. Going ahead, lab kits demo. Feel free to use one of the lab kits, use, open it, share it with the site staff, and explaining them how it is to be used, what all needs to be made, what all needs to be, how it is to be labeled, what all is to be submitted for which visit, and so on and so forth. Because the right kit to be used at the right time is again that is something really very important. IWRS depot. Do a trial run for a dummy patient so that how the reports are generated can be easily explained on a reality basis. CRF or ECRF demo. Even though the trainings are completed, let's go through with the site staff onto the ECRF and just have a basic navigation understanding from where to where, how to how, and what to what. Recruitment related decisions. Discussion. So discuss on how the recruitment pattern would be, how the process would be, what would be the number of recruitment expected at the site, do they have any pre-screening done, that is nothing but basic identification of the subjects from the database, and so on. ISF maintenance training, like we discussed, the regulatory binder, the pharmacy binder. So ensure that these files are readily available with the proper separators and train the site on how they need to file in each and every document. Motivate the team to do the filing in a timely manner, because if it is not done later on, it might be a chaos. Visit log. Now, when we talk about visit log, in a word, we understand by the visit log of a monitor or a co-monitor visiting the site, starting from the SSV to SIV, or rather, it would start basically from SIV and not SSV, because SIV is the first visit after your approvals, is the first visit after your site is selected. So SIV should be the first visit into the visit log, followed by the consecutive monitorings, and the last one, your closeout visit. So ensure that the right date, the person's name, his or her role onto the study, and the purpose of visit is captured under the visit log, because this would also include the visits that are done for audits and inspections. Even the auditor would sign the visit log. The date it is dated on the same day and countersigned by the investigator, confirming that the visit has happened. Collect the copies of required documents. There might be a possibility where some of the documents which were to be procured during your SSVs are not done, or we have some updates to some of the documents which needs to be procured. We have a we have a copy which is now outdated, which needs an update. Maybe, for example, a fantastic example if we have to use, maybe I would pick up an investigator's undertaking or FTA 1572. When we did the submission, we had submitted with Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, and Dr. D as the sub investigator. But now, before my site initiation, say for example, maybe Dr. D has left an organization or an institute and now it's Dr. Z. So, an updated document with Dr. Z mentioned needs to be collected when we talk about an investigator's undertaking or FTA 1572, because these are the documents where you have the section which captures the list of sub investigators. And yes, when we have a new addition, We also need to procure the CVs, their medical registration certificates, and so on and so forth. Ensure that all the copies that or are required are collected during your site initiation visit if pending. Reconfirm system access. So once the training and everything is done, just reconfirm before you leave the site that the accesses are good to go, are received and functional. Because soon we would be having the first patient in after your site initiation visit. And at that point of time, access is not happening, or you're not able to, or you're facing some technical difficulties, should not be a problem. So once your visit is done, what after that? Yes, it has to be supported by your letter or other follow-up letter, and your site initiation visit report. So this report will enlist each and every item, or rather each and every parameter, or each and every activity that was done at the site. The follow-up letter will enlist your action items, thanking an investigator for giving his or her time for the visit, action item by the site, action items by the monitor. Reply to the queries. There might be a situation where a CRA or a monitor who is visiting the site is not a medical person. He is a basic research scientist or maybe a qualified research professional. So any questions coming up from the site with regards to therapeutic area or any medical specific question might not be answered by him or her. So in that case, this would go directly to the medical monitor, who is a medically qualified individual and responsible to answer these particular questions. So once the visit is done, if you have any queries with regards to medical terms or something of that sort, ensure that it is discussed with the medical monitor and replied back in a timely manner. Confirmation of requested requirements. Like we did discussed about the refrigerator, similar fashion, if we have some other requirement which is not fulfilled, ensure that it is provided to the site well before time, at least before the FPI, that is your first patient in. Yes, the next point, follow up on FPI, because once the site is initiated, every sponsor, every CRO will expect the first patient to be screened within a week's time, because the site is just trained, ensured that everything is there, and site is ready. So now the trainings are also done, and site is good to start with the screening. So the first patient screening is expected within a week, and your first patient enrollment after the screening results are available. Internal filing of documents. Yes. So maybe there are a couple of documents that you have procured from the site. Ensure that these documents are filed under CSF. Yes, ISF is at the site, CSF at the sponsors or the CRO's end. Ensure these documents are filed in a timely manner. Again and again, I would repeat, in a timely manner. Ensure closure of all the action items prior to your FPI. So before the first patient is in or the first patient is screened, ensure that all the action items are closed, because this action items may be with regards to your training, this may be with regards to some basic requirements at the site, this trainings this requirements action items may be with regards to having a contract with an external facility, maybe for x-rays, for PET scan, for CT scan, and so on and so forth. So ensure that before your first patient is screened, all the action items are closed. So that was a brief or rather detail on site initiation visit. Next important topic, monitoring. A day-to-day activity or other routine activity, or also I can say it is a quality check. And this is something that helps in ensuring that the site is abiding to all the four requirements what we were talking about since the start of the presentation. So let's see what the definition says. Monitoring is a very important aspect of a trial. The monitor is the main communication between the sponsor and an investigator, as the monitor is somebody who is assigned by the sponsor, and he or she is a person who would be visiting the site, meeting an investigator in person, discussing the things. Monitoring is an act of overseeing the process of a clinical trial and ensuring that it is conducted in accordance with protocol, SOPs, GCP, and any other regulatory requirement. So again, when we talk about monitoring, it's nothing but a quality check done for the conduct of a trial. Yes, like we did for SIV, site initiation visit, we would be discussing on the same lines for site monitoring visit. That is before, during, and after. So what happens at the site monitoring visit? Before you go ahead for the site monitoring visit, what are the preparations? First and foremost, confirm your visit, date and time included. So before you go ahead for the visit, discuss with the investigator, discuss with the site staff, confirm the date of visit, from what time to what time the visit needs to be conducted. Once this is confirmed, go ahead, send a confirmation letter. Like we said, what is documented is done. So until and unless your visit is not documented with help of confirmation letter, it's not confirmed. And your confirmation letter to be supported with the agenda. So the site or site staff is now prepared with the clear understanding of what will be monitored, how it will be monitored. Review the reports and follow-up letters of the previous visit. So if it is your first monitoring visit, what would be referred is your SIV follow-up letters and reports. If not, the previous monitoring visit reports and the follow-up letters. Now, why do we need to do this? To understand if there are still any action items that are open. At times, it happens where the action items cannot be confirmed to be closed until and unless it is not being checked on at the site. So, understand what were the action items, how the closure is or was done, or is the closure still required after you reaching the site. So, keep a tab of all the action items. Once you're at the site, you first start your site visit from the previous action items and ensure that they are closed. Next step, before going to the site, review the CSF, Central Site File, which is available at the sponsors or the CRO's end. Do the complete review, do the thorough review of it, ensure what are the missing documents, what was done previously, till what it is complete, so that you can procure the documents, so forth. Identify the missing documents, like we just talked. See if there is any change in team member. See if there is any updations done in the course of time. Are there any documents that are missing? Is there any notification which was done to ethics committee and not sent to the sponsor or a CRO? So these all falls under your missing documents. So identify what is missing. Enlist them before you go to the site. Ensure the notifications are completed. On a timely manner, a sponsor or a CRO keeps on sending something called as SUSARs. A very good example to be used over here. Now we all know what are SUSARs: suspected, unexpected, serious adverse event. So this needs to be shared across the sites and they are to be notified. to ethics committees. So basically, SIOMs, SUSARs, these are the documents which are sent on a timely manner and they are notified to ethics committees. So these notifications sometimes have been missed to send. So ensure that what are the list of SUSAs or SIOMs that were sent across and are the notifications received for that particular document. Say for example, also there are some minor changes in some other document and the EC needs to be notified. So is it received? Yes, no. If not, that falls under your list for the documents to be collected or the missing documents. Collect all the copies of the document that are expected to be filed at the site. So these documents were basically sent across, but there might be an error where some documents are missed to file. So when you visit the site, you come across that XYZ document is not filed in, and it is an important document. So beforehand, have a copy with you so that you need not run behind getting the printouts at the site and the document is readily available with you for filing at the site. Any adverse events reported during the course of time, enlist all the adverse events because these as adverse events that you have recorded might be an adverse event as per the document that you have received or as per the explanation you have received. But once you go to the site, when you do the complete analysis or review, you might coin it now at as a serious adverse event. Say for example, a very good example that we can use over here is a mild viral fever. Maybe a subject was having fever in a course of time and he was admitted because of maybe any parameter for a couple of hours, which might not be so very serious for an investigator. But as per the documentation, this falls under in-house hospitalization, in hospitalization, which is a serious adverse event. Maybe the patient is cured, maybe he is treated and he is back to his routine life. But yes, it was not an adverse event, it was a serious adverse event. So this needs to be captured. So enlist all the adverse events that have been reported in the course of time. Be ready to review it to the core. Have more details of the event if any. Maybe some kind of adverse event is reported. You or we are not so very well medically qualified to understand that particular event. So before you go to the site, discuss that particular event with your medical monitor and be prepared with a clear picture of that particular indication so that your review and your analysis on that particular event becomes more clear when you are at the site. Have more details. Okay, we did that. Training material if required. So if there are any new team members who needs to be imparted with the training, or if there are any misconducts where the team needs retraining, ensure that all the training material is being carried by you before or are these readily available, reviewed and approved by the sponsor. IP and lab kit details. Have a detailed report with what were the new IPs that were sent, how many IPs were already dispensed till your last visit, how many lab kits were sent, how many lab kits are available from your end so that you can actually do a proper accountability when you are at the site. Missing lab reports. At times, sites complain about patient A, visit X, particular report was not received. Go to the portal, ensure that you have the report, and you provide that particular report to the site and ensure that it is filed. So carry all those reports, be ready with those reports before you go to the site for your monitoring visit. Completion of ECRF. Now, when we talk about monitoring, what is the first and foremost or the most crucial activity that we do? SDV, source data verification. So where do we verify this particular data? From the source into CRF. Yes, so ensure if it is a paper CRF, Have a telephonic confirmation that all the CRFs are filled and are readily available for your review. If it is eCRF, you have all the scope to log in into the system and ensure that the CRFs are complete. Once the CRFs are complete, if it isn't complete, ensure that before you reach the site, the CRFs are now completed so that you have the data readily available for your verification. Completion of logs and forms. We have been talking since the site initiation visit about the logs and forms, so ensure that they are complete because this will be something that will be as a source for you to do the STV. Now we are ready for the site visit. We are at the site. So what do we do at the site? Like we had listed down all the adverse events in the course of time. Now is the time to scrutinize all this adverse event to the core. If required, call for an additional subject file, check from the medical records, because like we used an example of hospitalization for just a viral fever, which might not be captured in your clinical records or the clinical trial records to be more precise. So ensure that the hospital file is also checked for those particular subjects for some hidden information, which might be missed unknowingly. So try to understand each and every AE at the best so that you do not miss on reporting of any adverse event in the detailed manner. Training to the new team members. So if there are any new team members, ensure that the trainings are done for them and they are now well educated and properly trained for the conduct of the trial. ICF review for regulatory and your pharmacy binder. This would be your routine activity for all the site visits or all the site monitoring visits to be more precise. Because after all, when there is an audit or an inspection coming in, it's not the subject who would be called in and checked for, it would be your files which will be reviewed in the first go. So your review beforehand in a timely manner, ensuring the completion in an appropriate manner is very, very crucial and very, very important. So go ahead with your file reviews, spend more time behind it. Discussion with the PI. Towards the end of your visit, ensure that you have at least a couple of minutes where you would go ahead and discuss all the findings, all the issues, all the best practices with the principal investigator. Issues, findings, yes, very, very important to be solved. Best practices, keeping the site motivated. So ensure that everything is discussed with the principal investigator towards the end of your visit. There might be a couple of action items where investigators' insight would be really, really important. So ensure that you put that on the table with an investigator and try to close it out before you leave the site for the particular day. Ensure completion of all the action items. First and foremost, action item from your previous visits. Ensure that they have to be closed. And also, for this visit, if you have discovered or if you have come across any issues, any action item that is required, try to complete that particular action item well in time before you leave the site, preferably so that your list of action items for the next visit reduces. Your visit log completion. Yes, you as a monitor, now it's your responsibility to ensure that you sign across the visit log and get it countersigned by an investigator or the responsible site staff so that your visit is documented. Collection of the documents. Very, very, very important because your ISF and your CSF are almost the replica. So ensure that you carry the documents that are required for CSF filing. Subject enrollment log, temperature logs, visit log, adverse event log, missing notification, missing documents for CSF. So ensure that all these logs are completed, reviewed, analyzed, and the copies of the same are carried by you for the filing at the CRO or the sponsor's end. And at the last, ensure that your next visit date is finalized, just to reduce the burden from your hand, and also informing the site about the time for your next visit well in advance will be really helpful for them to ensure that everything is maintained and completed in a timely manner. So this was your monitoring visit. Going ahead with what happens at the site monitoring visit, but once your visit is over. Like we discussed in all the past two visits, yes, your visit will be supported by the report and the follow-up letter. So the report will be for your internal filing and the follow-up letter will be sent at the site. So this follow-up letter will again be nothing but thanking the site for allowing the monitoring, giving time, and the action item by the site, by the sponsor. Send the missing documents required at the site. Maybe during the process of monitoring, you have come across a couple of documents that are not filed, and maybe you are not carrying them with you, or something that needs to be prepared and sent across. So ensure that all these documents are sent in time so that your ISF looks complete and up to date. Reply to the unanswered queries. Yes, like we talked about during your SIVs, there might be a queries coming up which may be out of your qualification or out of your role. Ensure that it has been addressed to the right individual and it is replied in a timely manner. Internal filing of the documents, like when we were talking about the documents to be collected during the visits. So once these documents are collected, ensure that they are filed in your CSF, that is nothing but your internal filing, in a timely manner. Ensure completion of closure of all the action items. So all the action items that were kept open are to be followed upon till they are closed. Ensure that you continue to follow up with the site from your end, close this action item, and document the closure of each and every action item. Ensure the follow-up letter reaches the site in time for the CSF, for the ISF. The follow-up letter in original has to be sent at the site and the copy of the same has to be filed internally. So when we talk about sharing this follow-up letter in time, is because this is a letter that would be having all the action items listed down. So if it reaches on time, the action items would be closed on time and documented appropriately. And ensure that your next visit date is finalized. Maybe you would have finalized this particular date during your visit, but later reconfirm the visit and be ready for the next visit. Let's have some comments about the monitoring visit or monitor's visit. Monitors usually come out on an average of every 3 months for a 1 day visit. This may vary depending on the study and enrollment. Like the time that we have over here is something that is on an average, a theoretical value, which might not be the same for all the protocol for all the indications. It may also vary from the number of enrollments. So if I have to give you a fantastic example for the clear understanding or a better understanding of this particular statement, say for example, the monitoring plan says that the visit has to be conducted once in every 3 weeks. Let's take the average that is mentioned over here. But Also, if there are more than 5 number of patients recruited or enrolled, the visit has to be done within 1 week from the time of fifth enrollment. So, say for example, my first visit was on first week of January. My next visit has to be towards the end of third week or the start of fourth week. But in the first week itself, after my visit, if we have three patients who are already or five patients who are already enrolled in the study, then my visit has to be towards the end of second week or the start of third week. So whatever comes the first, the visit has to be planned accordingly. One day visits, or at times, if there are more number of patients, if there are more number of CRF pages, there might be an extension of the visit and it might go on for 2 days visit as well. So this is something that we talk theory, but the practical aspect or the practical application of this particular scenario would vary from time to time, protocol to protocol, situation to situation. It is expected that your monitor will come out within 2 weeks of you entering the first patient. Now, this is something that is really very important. 2 weeks is again, that is something what I would call it as a theory. Practical aspect might vary, but on an average, yes, it is 2 weeks. So, after your first patient, your first monitoring is something that is really very crucial. Need not wait for more number of patients to be enrolled, need not wait for a longer duration from the patient is enrolled, because this is the initiation at the site for the patient records, capturing data, maintaining the source data, filing into the trial master file. So if you start very soon, you might set a standard at the site, a basic format or basic process can be explained, and the same process, same format can be followed across throughout the trial. If you wait for more number of patients to be enrolled, might be more number of changes would be required. So first patient, after that the first monitoring visit would really play a very crucial role when it comes to your site monitoring visit after the first patient. You must provide your monitor a desk or other ample space in a fairly quiet area with access to a telephone and an internet connection. Now I can say a telephone and internet connection is almost waived off because every individual carries his or her own facility with it, with himself. But yes, a proper desk or the space is something that is really very important because you would be sitting down with n number of documents with your ISF, which will include your regulatory binder, your pharmacy binder. Say for example, if you are going ahead with the monitoring of 6 subjects, so the files of 6 subjects, medical records, your clinical trial documents, and lots and lots and lots of documents. So ensure that a monitor gets sufficient place and preferably a fairly quiet area so that he or she can concentrate and get the work done in the best possible manner. They also will want to meet the PI for a few minutes to discuss the study and any other issues or concerns. Like we were talking during the monitoring visit, you as a monitor will prefer to meet the PI after every visit and preferably towards the end of your visit and not in between. Only reason of meeting the PI towards the end of the visit is getting the action items closed, briefing them on the issues, motivating them by sharing the best practice at their site, sharing your experience of the other sites, helping them in getting the things done much better, and so on. So ensure to meet the PI before every visit ends. And going to the last visit under the types of visit is nothing but your close out visit. Close out site visit, site close out visit. People use it as per their comfort. So this again is very very important because here you have to review, understand, and close the things which are lying open since your site initiation. So nothing has to be kept open, nothing has to be kept unanswered, nothing has to be kept unsealed. Now, what do I mean by these? Let's go through the slides and talk over it. The closeout visit occurs after the study completion or site withdrawal. So, first and foremost, a very important statement for us to understand: any site that is initiated has to be closed, irrespective of site has enrolled the subject or not. If it is initiated, it has to be closed. Why? Because when we talked about site initiation, we understood that the site has received each and every document, essential document, confidential document. Site have received IP, site have received lab kits, site is trained, the duty delegation log is opened. When I say open, I mean by each and every site staff has the start date mentioned but not the stop date, so it's kept open. So ensure that the closeout visit happens and all these documents are taken care of. Now, what is this? In general, three activities are required to officially close out a site. First, the monitor conducts a closeout visit and signs the monitoring log. Obviously, after each and every visit, the log is to be signed, like we discussed. The first visit that is, or sign, the first visit that is put in your visit log is your SIV, and the last visit is nothing but your closeout visit. Principal investigator submits a final report to IRB stating that the site is closed. So ensure that the ethics committee is well intimated in time about the closure of the site happening on XYZ date and the notification is procured. The sponsor sends a letter stating that the site is closed. And once your site visit is done, the site closeout visit is done, ensure that the sponsor sends a letter about the closure. What happens at the closeout visit? Very, very important for us to know. The monitor conducts a final data review, collection of all the outstanding data. Now, there should not be something lying as an outstanding data because when you plan for a site closeout visit, you will definitely review the complete data from the scratch, that is from the site initiation till date, which would again be a brief review because you have done your detailed review during the site monitoring visit. Collection of all the outstanding data is something which might come, but which should not be the scenario because before the site closeout, we have something called as database lock. Now, what is database lock? Database lock is something where all the data is been sent to the data management team. The data is validated, is recorded in the respective format. The queries have been generated for any data which is not acceptable. It is replied in a timely manner, and the data is now cleaned. That means all the data that is available is now accepted without any query, without any concerns. So once the database is locked, only then your closeout visit happens. Study drug is returned or destroyed on site. Now, what you would do for the study drug that was unused? Say, for example, a site has to, or the patient has to visit the site on a monthly manner, and the tablets are being given them in bottles. So you might have some bottles which are not used. You might have some bottles which were used by the subject but now returned with some still tablets pending into it. Say, for example, patient came on the 25th day, but the five tablets are still lying in that particular bottle. So what you would do for this particular drugs? Will it be used? Definitely not. Will it be thrown away? No. It has to be destroyed. Destroyed as per the respective SOP, which can be done at the site if the site does have that facility. If not, they are sent to a center which is assigned by the sponsor for destruction, or else they are returned back to the depot, which in return goes back to the sponsor and the destruction happens at the sponsor's end. So this formality has to be ensured that it is complete. Means ensure that during or towards the end of a closeout visit, there is no drug lying at the site. A final review of the regulatory binder and the pharmacy binder, maybe I've missed to capture it, but yes, a final review of regulatory binder and the pharmacy binder is done, because this will be your final go ahead for ensuring that each and every document is filed, it's appropriately filed, and it is readily available. Because once the closeout visit is done, all the documents will be kept or rather archived, which will be sealed. Yes, now coming to the word sealed. All the documents ideally are packed in a container, it's locked, and the sealing is done for that particular container, signed and dated by an investigator, and they are archived. Archival can be on site, archival can be off site. But the particular container or the box that is being used for archival is not supposed to be open until and unless there is a special request coming all the way from any regulatory body or any for cause audit happening or inspections coming down. So this is the final opportunity for you to ensure that everything is placed and available for the review later on if required. And if applicable, verification that all blood or biological samples have been submitted. Now, what do we understand by biologicals have been submitted? At times, we have something called as a sub-study, or we also have, say, for example, the study is requiring some histopathology of a tissue. So the biopsies that is done, the slides are maintained in a refrigerator, which might not have been touched for a couple of weeks or months or maybe a more than a year, and which might be forgotten. So ensure that at least now, if they have to be destroyed, they are destroyed in an ethical manner. If they are to be sent to the central laboratory, they are sent across and documented in the right form, in the right manner. And these documents are again a copy is being captured or rather procured by you for your internal filing, and the final log goes into the archive. Return or destruction of all unused forms, nothing but the CRFs and other forms. So now we have EDC, so ensure that the final signature by an investigator is all done. And if it is a paper CRF, all the unused forms, unused papers are now ready for destruction or they are already destroyed, because they are one of the crucial or important essential documents which should not be kept unattended. Review and correction of delegation of authority form, nothing but the duty delegation law what we were talking since the start. Collect the duty delegation log with all the stop dates of each and every participant mentioned. Carry the original, have a copy into the file. Original goes with the sponsor, as this is a proprietary ownership lies with the sponsor. So ensure that the original is carried now by you. Collection of IRB closure report. IRB, Ethics Committee. So the closure report or the letter, the copy of the closure report, if you have procured it, carry it with you, because that will be the final document that goes into your file. So before this particular document goes into the file, ensure that all the documents are now in the file, and this is the last document going in. So this was about all the 4 visits. Now I would keep the forum open for the questions coming online. Thank you. So basically, nowadays, if we talk about clinical research, yes, the industry is going good. Maybe this sessions from IDA would be really helpful to you in brushing up your knowledge and getting yourself prepared for the interviews. More on clinical research, if I have to share something with you, I would definitely say that best practices, keep in touch with your faculties, keep in touch with your faculties in understanding what they face on day-to-day basis. Try to discuss with them on any questions that are coming on the way, because more number of questions you all would be asking will be really helpful for you in understanding what are the issues or what you would learn about it. And more discussion will lead up to more clear picture of what exactly is clinical research. Theoretical knowledge is something, and practical aspect, practical knowledge would add something more to it. So we are waiting for any questions to come up. Okay, so Till the time we have some questions, let me throw some light on the industry of clinical research in today's state. What are the demands? What are the demands of you as a research professional once you qualify, or once you complete this particular training? Yes, initially we were into the dilemma how the clinical research industry would go. Do we have a good scope at India or not? But yes, definitely, India is said to be the hub of clinical trial. The benefit is the patient population. The benefit is the linguistic nature. We have, being in India, we have a widely spoken English compared to the rest of the countries. The overall population of India, the geographical distribution, and an upcoming diseases every now and then. So you as a research professional and clinical research will be something really helpful for you to understand, or you will be a good support to the industry, as you are somebody who would be very clear with all the perspectives of clinical trials in and out. When we talk about the guidelines, if we talk about the requirements, if we talk about the GCP, the roles and responsibilities, yes, you are the qualified individual to help the industry and get the clinical research going on for a duration and giving the best from compliance, from adherence, from all the perspective. We are still waiting for questions to come up. So I've put my email ID for to all of you. If you have any questions coming forth, please feel free to mail me on the email ID on the live chat. I'll be really very happy to answer it. So we have the first question over here. How do you see the scope of clinical research in India in coming years? Yes, looking at the scope and the scenario, current scenario, 2012 was a really bad time, 12, 13, where we actually had the trials being kept on hold because of multiple issues that have been arised. DCGI was inspecting the sites randomly, and they had ensured that all the sites have been inspected, the issues were identified, and the amendments that took place after this particular big scenario. And yes, these amendments were really very crucial, really very important, and this amendments has led to more clear picture on the clinical trials, more clear picture on the scope, the processes, which have been really made very, very, very stringent and more crisp and clear. So the scope of clinical research in India is, according to me, now every individual would have their own perspective. But according to me, being into industry for a couple of years, I'm sure that India is never going to go down under the scope of clinical trial. As I just mentioned, India is definitely said to be the hub of clinical trial. So, did we have some more questions coming on? Let me put some more light on the scope of clinical research in India. In the current world, if we see, even the global companies across the world are preferring to have India as one of the targeted countries when it comes to conduct a trial. So, every pharmaceutical, every clinical trial happening on a global scale, India is one of the targeted country because no wonder the timeline for approval for the conduct of trial by DCGI is more compared to the rest of the country. But the patient pool, the compliance, the ethical conduct is something that is really, really very good in India compared. I would not say as compared to the rest of the country, but yes, in India it is something that is really very good. And the quality of data that is generated from India and the contribution that India gives towards the complete data is something that is really huge. So this helps. This helps team in, or rather, this helps India in proving it to be a hub.
Sorry, can I keep my bag for 2 minutes? Huh? Sorry.
So, as there are no more questions coming up, we'll end up the webinar for the day. Wishing all of you the very best of luck from my side. Thank you.